more from the UN General Assembly.
Yeah, I just liked this. A tale of two speeches.
A tale of two speeches. No, I think it shows a lot, both what America stands for and what other countries stand for and what they're willing to use this tiny amount of time. Think about the amount of time a country has to speak to the UN General Assembly and what they choose to highlight in that speech.
Which, is there equal time? Like,
I don't know.
Does Trinidad and Tobago get the same amount of time as the U.S.? I'm serious. Like, I think that's an important question.
I'm going to bet no on that one. I'm going to say absolutely not. I'd be surprised if they get to, like, you know, have a little kiosk in the hallway as people are arriving. Okay, so we'll start off by saying something about Lula's speech.
Lula da Silva, president of Brazil.
For some odd reason, his is in a different language or something.
How dare you?
So I don't know what he's saying.
É fundamental preservar a liberdade.
I mean, listen to that. That's ridiculous. So
I've always thought Portuguese feels like you've been placed into a fun house and are listening to Spanish. It's all just kind of like, wow. It's like warped, and I understand it's a different language, but like I just like, because I can understand some Spanish. Portuguese, I'm fucking useless. Anyway, so for those of you who don't speak Portuguese, and it won't matter anyway because we're not playing the video, but the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, spoke at the opening of the UN General Assembly. This was the September 19th, and he said, quote, "It is fundamental to preserve the freedom of the press. A journalist like Julian Assange cannot be punished for informing society in a transparent and legitimate way," end quote. Well, 3 cheers to that. Fucking amen. And how fucking wonderful that he chooses to uplift the plight of Julian Assange in, again, what Lee pointed out is not a lot of time that he has to stand up there. And there's so many important issues, but this is a powerful and important thing to bring up. And also a very nice fuck you to the likes of the UK and its overlord, the United States. And so amen to this speech.
Yeah, and
not so much to the next one.
And this comes on the heels of 60 Australian lawmakers, 60 members of parliament coming out and saying Julian Assange should be free and allowed to return to his home country of Australia. So yes, another important moment. But so that's speech number 1. And then let's get to Biden's amazing speech.
Nope,
that's
third one.
Go ahead.
President Biden took aim at Russia.
So also
color me surprised.
Also standing up for human rights violations, right?
So yeah, just close that one. Discussing arms control, which, okay, if anybody, wow, like the largest, by orders of magnitude, the largest weapons exporter on the planet,
and we just
dare stand up there,
cluster bombs
and
to
talk
Nazis
about arms control. President Biden accused Russia of, quote, shredding longstanding arms control agreements, end quote. Which, by the way, there's too much.
Well, Trump. I think Trump pulled out of most of them, didn't he?
Well, and not only that, but do we want to talk about like who
dropped atomic bombs?
Well, yeah, but also like who pulled out of the Iran deal?
Yeah.
Who has, like you just said, sent cluster bombs to fucking
cluster
Nazis.
bombs to Nazis that are banned. Cluster bombs are banned in 100 countries. We also were finding ways around these treaties with Russia, such as basically you take the main, center of a nuclear bomb and you change everything around, you retrofit it or whatever to make it more modern. So you're updating your nuclear arsenal, which was supposed to be against these treaties, but you're like, no, all we did was change the flux capacitor. We didn't.
Also, the U.S. exited Open Skies in 2020, a treaty that allowed the U.S., Russia, and other signatories to conduct unarmed surveillance flights over each other's territory. At the time, Biden, who was a candidate, slammed the move, but his administration declined Russia's offer to salvage the treaty in 2021. And this post by the guy who runs antiwar.com, Dave DeCamp, outlines several other issues, like in 2002, George W. Bush pulled out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Systems Treaty, which President Putin has cited as the reason for developing Russia's most powerful missile that can pack a huge nuclear payload and travel 11,000 miles. So again, we see the history and the pattern of behavior vis-a-vis the U.S. continuously poking the Russian bear and daring them to go to war. And of course, now we have the proxy war in Ukraine as the hot war effect of that. But so Biden goes on to say, I'm laughing because it's so fucking ridiculous. And I want to beat Biden to death with one of his own fucking shoes.
He actually beat you to the death. He's been dead for a while now.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's. Quote, Russia alone bears responsibility for this war. I mean, wow. Russia alone has the power to end this war immediately, says the guy who just sent cluster bombs to Nazis.
Says the guy who also, he and Boris Johnson in the UK pushed to stop the peace treaty that was about to be signed April of last year, so like a month after the war started. They made sure to stop that peace treaty. They are now making sure that Ukraine not sit down to a table again and create a new peace treaty, that there are no talks. And on top of this, which is said next in the paragraph, you have the head of NATO just the other day, I covered that on a live stream, said that NATO, that Putin invaded in order to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and due to NATO expansion, which is the opposite of the propaganda we've been getting for a year and a half.
Right. So, yeah, this is like, again, a tale of two speeches. This is what Biden goes up at the UN to basically just stand there and talk shit and lies, clearly, about Russia. And as if that's the only international aspect that is important and valid to bring up. Of course, not the US's endless wars around the globe, both financial and, hot wars. And this is what Biden decides to cover. And again, I'm not surprised, but I'm angered and I'm fucking disgusted. And, compare that with the likes of Lula, who goes up there to speak about a journalist who has nothing directly to do with his nation, just like he has nothing directly to do with the United States, because Assange is not a citizen of the US and has never lived here. But Lula goes out of his way to highlight how fucked up it is to go after Assange. Just shows you the kind of people we're dealing with.